All right, let's go ahead and talk about absolute value. So remember, absolute value is the distance a number is from zero. So here we're saying that x is 5 units from zero. Well, as it turns out, there's two ways we could count. We could count to the right. 5 units to the right would be 5. Or we could go to the left. 5 units to the left would be -5. Both those numbers are 5 units from zero. So that means that x could either be -5 or x could be 5. Okay? So with absolute value equations, we're likely going to get two answers. There's one example of a number where you won't. See if you can maybe guess that on your own. Quick heads up, as far as order of operations go, absolute value is a grouping symbol. So when you're evaluating, absolute values group things together, so you do what's inside the absolute value first. So how do we go about solving an absolute value equation? So absolute value of x minus 5 is equal to 7. Well, what we're saying then is that x minus 5 must be 7 units from 0. So what could x minus 5 equal? Well, x minus 5 could be 7 units to the right or 7 units to the left. So we can either come up with the fact that x minus 5 must equal 7 or x minus 5 must equal -7. Okay? If it's 7 or -7, it is 7 units from 0. And now we have two linear equations that are very easy to solve. We've been solving them for quite some time now. X equals 12 or x is equal to -2. And of course, since we have two answers, we want to check both answers using substitution, or we can just glance at the graph. You notice I graphed the left side of the equation, x minus 5, or absolute value of x minus 5, and the right side, and I see that they intersect when x is equal to -2 or x is equal to 12. Those are my critical points. Now, what if we have something that is a little more complex? Well, here we don't just have an absolute value by itself. So we need to isolate it first so that we can get down to that question of how far that absolute value is from 0. So I go through and subtract 10 from both sides. I divide by 2, going through kind of my normal solving steps, but I'm solving for the absolute value instead of the variable in this case. Now I've gotten it down to where it looks like that previous example. I know that I want x minus 6 to be 4 units from 0. So x minus 6 could either be 4 units to the right, 4, or it could be 4 units to the left, -4. So I've got my two equations, and now I go through and I solve those simple linear equations. Okay? And I wind up with x equals 10, or I wind up with x equals 2. And of course, I would go through and actually check those both equations with the original equation to make sure they work. And as you can see, when I go through this, we do wind up with two statements that work.